Welcome to Real Talk with Khalid Ajmain.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh everyone. InsyaAllah, Alhamdulillah. We thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for today podcast, which is going to be very interesting. Another one series with Real Talk with Khalid Ajmain. So today we're going to talk about something that relate to jinn, the devil, shaitan, and things that we always relate to ghaib or mysticism, which is evil lah. And we're gonna expound on this. So the title will be The Devil Made Me Do It. And it's gonna be something different, not really focused on horror, but it's related to it. So today my guest is my beloved wife on the right, Ainun. How are you?
Good, Alhamdulillah.
And on the far right, the right winger is Kismet. How are you, Kismet?
Alhamdulillah.
Thank you for joining my podcast today. So usually people always relate the devil with evil. And as you can see, even in a horror movie, the devil make me do it. So it shows that how the devil possess people or the devil influence people. But on the other hand also, we understand that we are accountable on our own actions, isn't it? Right. So people are always confused and always related when things go wrong in their life with the devil. Their marriage didn't work, or even their narcissistic behavior or abuse that is happening, right? So I think I will go with Ainun first. Ainun. So what is your take like whenever there is things that going wrong in a marriage, in a family, in a friendship, that people tend to say, oh, it's the jinn, or the sihir, black magic, or even kena gangguan, right? What's your take on it? Padahal we learn that man can be vicious. Vicious as in macam serial killer, you know. What's your take on this?
I think that a lot of people actually think that everything that happens bad in their life is usually related to jinn. And I think that people might be less open to accepting that it could just be, mental thing, because we are humans, right? We have emotions.
I think it's the stigma.
Yeah, we have weaknesses. So sometimes even if you see like strange behavior, like let's say someone likes to, stay inside the room and doesn't go out, doesn't like to socialize. So there's actually a mental explanation. It could be anxiety and things like that. But for a lot of people actually, I mean within the community lah, not a lot, but maybe some people in the community, they think like, okay, this is a sign of jinn, maybe somebody is doing black magic or things like that. And I think that it's actually unhealthy because you are not dealing with the real problem. You are not dealing with the mental issue. Even things like, okay, my marriage didn't work out. Okay, I think it's because of jinn, no?
Or someone doesn't like it.
Someone doesn't like, and it's evil eye, and then that's why it doesn't work. I mean, of course, we know that evil eye is real, and the jinn exists, but at the same time, there might be other explanations that we are not willing to accept about the situation that happens. And I think it's important that we actually recognize that there is also there might be a mental factor to anything that happens. It's not necessarily just jinn. The first thing you think about is, okay, there's jinn.
Yeah, how about you, Kishan, your own experience on this matter where people say that my family is broken or dysfunctional or going through certain kaput, we say kaput as the term, just to have the term kaput, in a sense that it's because that we been traumatized, or we had jinn, or someone doesn't like our family because we are too happy, we are not doing anything. I mean, we are not like we are not like everyone else family. We go for holiday, we have a good career, we live in a good house. So your own experience, what you thought about this? Like,
There's a lot of factors. I mean, because I feel that you really see the end product, and most people usually think that there is like gangguan or evil or jinn at the really final stages, like many years.
Do you experience that people say that your family has something on?
Yeah, I mean, always like, oh, there's something in your house, you have to cleanse it and everything. But I think, like, it basically the equation is, when trauma starts, right? It's first it starts and it will go through stages, many stages, and build up. If nothing is done, it'll just get worse. And obviously when it gets worse, I mean, it becomes disastrous. Behavior becomes even worse. And we could relate it to evil, because we can never think that, how come this human can be like this? Where is the heart in this human that, that they are behaving like this? And then there's external factors, like let's say, for instance, the perpetrator seems so evil and no one can understand, but it's because the perpetrator has not been doing anything. And then if there are external influences, like maybe perpetrator is feeling stressed, even more stressed.
Yeah.
And even if there's substance abuse, that is the worst. Substance abuse, you will see the person totally, not as how you have known that person to be. Yeah. So that, I feel this is the reason why people always say that there's a disturbance, a spiritual disturbance. But actually, like what Ainun says, like we have to look into ourselves. It's actually probably, not probably, actually, it is like a trauma,
How would you describe trauma? Because people will say that trauma is more like fear, fear. So some people, even for me, when I was a kid, I do not know what is trauma. Like, between like trauma is like a mental capacity where you saw a ghost, then you're so afraid, or you saw somebody try to kill you, rape you, you know what I mean? So like, you're shocked. Yeah, I would say shocked. That's the right word. Just now I didn't think about it. But it goes deeper in something in a family that is unseen. This is what we call unseen. So how would you experience? Because I getting this because Kismet talk about trauma. Trauma caused everything. So some people say, oh, I have no trauma. I grew up well in my family. My parents pray. My siblings also. We learn religion. We practice. We go to the mosque every Friday prayer, or even Ramadan, Tarawih together. So how what you explain in a layman terms lah, easy for people to understand that.
I think trauma is anything that can affect a person. Like there is an element of shock, and also it creates a set of different emotions. Like even seeing your parents argue can be a trauma for you. Even things that are being said to you when you're young, negative things that affect you, that can be trauma. So a trauma doesn't need to be something really big. Like we often hear, events like sexual abuse or that kind of thing. So trauma can be anything. In fact, even outside of abuse, there can be other things that are traumatic. So the thing is that we need to recognize about trauma is that it affects us years beyond when that situation happened. and it can present in very subtle ways. Like for example, like many behaviors can be explained just as a result of trauma, no? Like besides isolation, like even sudden outbursts of emotion.
Oh yeah.
What else? I guess a lot of things. Like sometimes trauma is so bad that it makes you lose your mind, lose your, like Kismet was saying, the personality change.
Sanity,
Yeah, even your sanity. In fact, it doesn't need to be drugs for the personality to change. It can just be from trauma alone. And I think that's why when we see weird behavior, we think like, okay, maybe there's jinn. But weird behavior usually can be explained through trauma.
But Kismet, it's interesting that from what Ainun said and what you have spoken about trauma, and Ainun was saying about how we can get trauma, not necessarily abuse itself. It can also be something where we experience seeing our parents quarreling. Right? And in fact, my own experience as a life coach, I've seen people who committed infidelity because of trauma. And this is something that our society don't look at it seriously, because we often think like nothing lah, is small matter, right? And as I mentioned, it's unseen. So in a situation whereby people refuse to acknowledge and to deal with their trauma, they keep saying about something in the home that makes everybody don't like each other. You can feel the heat. The heat is rising. Sounds like a metal song. The heat is rising. The temperature is rising. But you yourself, right? I mean, each one of us know that our family are not perfect and will never be perfect, isn't it? But you yourself, what's your view on, like, people keep saying dah jumpa bomo, or dah jumpa, say bomo lah, people say salah, okay lah, dah jumpa Ustaz Ruqyah, dah this, dah that. So what is your own experience and point of view on this?
There's a lot of aspects to this. When you're facing trauma, you will have all the physical sensations, and what I've realized over the years is that you will come first when you witness everything, when the trauma is still fresh, like what Ainun says, it happens, and then you will feel it much later. Then all these sensations, whatever that comes to your physical body, it could be mistaken for jinn, right? I mean, you get into cold sweat all of a sudden and you feel a sudden fear. This is a typical horror show, right?
Yeah, panic, also panic disorder.
Yeah, also panic. And, so you're just thinking like, oh, is there something around me? But no, it's actually coming from inside of you. And then after a while of feeling all these sensations, if you don't do anything about it, your body numbs itself. And when it numbs itself, right, I'm not sure myself, but I feel that that's when you go into survival mode, when you numb everything. And then, I mean, in my experience, like after a few years, when I got out of a volatile environment and all these sensations start to leave from my body, is then when I realized that, like when I've come to a fresh situation, it can be not related to the trauma that is not similar to the trauma that I had before, but something happens in my life, but all these sensations come back. My body will be trembling, my feet, my hands, and dry mouth and everything, and then what is this? What's happening? All this, I mean, if you are intuitive about what's going on in your body, in your mental state, you will know what's going on. But if you are the kind who just, this is not me, something's wrong, something's disturbing me, this mindset, then it's tougher for you to deal with yourself, because if you just keep thinking that external forces are the ones that are contributing to your situation right now.
Yeah, I think that's what happened in many abusive cases, right? Where they say that, why my father is like that because he's been influenced by jinn or shaitan, or there is someone who, I'm sorry to say this lah, I always experience like people saying that my father had an infidelity because somebody put on spell on him, or even my mother, and that's deep. But then when you look into it, like in many cases, it's more of your trauma or baggage, I would say. The fact that you ignore it, you ignore to address it at the earlier stage, like what you mentioned, so it becomes volatile, right? And you're not doing anything. You should be doing something. But I believe that we are also under pressure from society to perform, to show that our family is nice, like how many people would present it in social media with the photo of dinner or holiday, travelling, kan. But then again, on the other hand, we also saw how people behavior can be odd. I call them Jekyll and Hyde. At one moment they are like that, then another moment suddenly they just flip. And even recently, people mentioning about celebrity who went through divorce. There was this celebrity lah. I'm not hard on it, but it's a good example, like what Ainun was talking about evil eye. And many mention, this is why you shouldn't post about your marriage on social media, your photo, your family, your children, because the evil eye. I don't think we doubt about it, because there is a hadith about it, and we also don't doubt about sihir. We don't doubt, but sometimes people don't understand psychologically that when you endure trauma for so long, it's the capability of a human being is limited. You can lose your sanity, and that's why you will start to do something that which doesn't make sense, isn't it, Ainun? And you mentioned just now about evil eye also. So the point what I'm trying to say is long-winded I say this, but because the point I'm trying to say is to capture everything. Like, okay, you say about family, you say about marriage and all that, but the refusing part is you do not want to inner work at the earlier stage. And I feel that even as Muslim, if you look or you read the history of Muslims in the past, we are the most advanced in terms of even mental health. Right? There's so many Muslims who are so good in this field, but we lost it somehow because of stigma like this. In your situation, and I guess you learn psychology and so on, do you think that people just trying to escape to the point where they keep saying that, well, I have to live with this because it's me against the jinn, the devil?
I think it's important to actually, in a way it's like an escapism. Like it's easier to say that it's the jinn that caused it rather than to accept that, okay, this happens because of trauma. And I think one of the psychology professors, like he said, he only, of all the cases that he had, only like I think he said like 1% or 2% are actually black magic.
Oh, I think you are referring to Dr. Mustafa Badawi.
Yes, Dr. Mustafa Badawi.
Syed Abdulaziz's friend. He's for those who are listening and watching this podcast, he's a murid of Habib Mashur Al-Haddad, and he wrote a lot of books on the Ba'alawi, also translation of Habib Abdullah Haddad and so on. Yeah, so continue, just to give people reference.
Yeah. So I mean, for someone with so much experience doing therapy, and he's saying that, I mean, I think that is an indication that actually a lot of the symptoms can be explained. In fact, we mentioned mental, but even physical symptoms, like people are saying like, okay, if you have pain here, oh, it's already jinn. So all this can
like my eczema lah. People say my eczema, oh, got jinn.
yes, even my kidney stones, like people think maybe I got
Wow.
jinn, but then this
Everything,
is like basically a CT scan has proof that it's there, you know, and it's causing the pain. But some people think that it might be jinn. So everything from physical to mental, now we are just blaming it. Okay, it's the jinn, you know, and we are not working on it. If let's say I believe that it is the jinn, right, then I don't need to change my diet. So I don't need to drink water.
This was happening
So,
today.
so you're not dealing with it, no?
Yeah,
Then you will
yeah.
continue having it. Then when you continue having it, you're saying like, okay, the jinn is continuing, disturbing me. And I think it's important to address it. So that's why even for mental issues, like you need to address it. If not, it will just stay there. And if you keep on thinking about the jinn, then you're not addressing what else it might be.
It's interesting because I also have this lah. You know, who doesn't like macam, oh, my family went through this and so on. And I met Syed Mahi. I remember I met Syed Mahi the first time in Madinah Bay. And then I talked to him about it lah, like my family kind of spiritual disturbance and so on. Then I have this anxiety or like a bit of fear, a bit in certain times. Then he gave me some doa. And then interestingly, because as I go along with him and the journey with him, and then later on he said, okay, read, whoever have this, whether to know is sihir or not, read 313 times Ayatul Kursi, you know that, right? And then from that on, moving forward, right, after so many years, maybe 10 years, I guess, alhamdulillah, it's like you realize like it's actually interesting and it's true. It's like, okay, you may think that this is spiritual, but then when you look deep into it, how your nerves affect everything that you see. It might be someone did to you, but suddenly you realize, wait a minute, actually we have a lot of baggage that we need to unpack. You know, like ghost movie, they go to the root, to the source, where the evil started, how the evil started, like that lah. Suddenly you realize it's my nerves, or it's that relates to trauma. But then to find that balance is not easy, isn't it? But I will still suggest lah, if people doubt, okay, you go and read lah the Ayatul Kursi. But how sincere you are to yourself then? I mean, to me, my own personal experience, I know that people can be disturbed if you don't take care of your trauma. Because syaitan will just come, don't pray lah. I believe that. I mean, we know that, don't pray lah, or don't do anything lah, because you already gone case lah. But at the same time also, we know that if we don't deal with our mental and our emotions, we will be affected. Isn't it? Yeah, so moving forward from this now, is like, how would you address this to people, like saying, don't think too much about the devil, but at the same time, you know, it's not that easy to think about, I am something wrong with me. Correct or not? Like me, example lah, I have eating disorder because of my stress and everything I went through in my life. So my coping mechanism is makan, or I drink Coke, or I drink Sprite, or I love dessert. You know, like you happy. But then on the other hand, someone ever told me, Khalid, it's still better than you take drugs. But you know, from there I begin to realize like, actually, right, we all have something heavy in our heart. That's why there is a Sufi saying that the heart is like the grave of all your wound and your secret. How do we let go? This is what I'm trying to ask you about that.
How do we let go? I think it takes years of work. That's one thing. But people want a shortcut.
Yeah, like tarbiyah kan, is until your last breath.
Yeah. So even for people who, you know, like when you're talking about trauma, right? Sometimes it takes. Sometimes you thought like, okay, after 5 years I feel better now. Then suddenly maybe 10 years later, then they have a breakdown. So it does happen, and I think that you have to learn to manage it and also manage your expectations. That means people actually have this ideal of, okay, I want to be this way. I want to be cured. Cured as in, okay, it will never happen again. But we are human beings, so whenever we go through trauma, it's not going to leave us just like that. So it might happen that we break down sometimes and things like that. So you need to manage your expectation, and basically to be honest with yourself. I think that's also important in,
and that's the difficult part.
Yeah. Like that's why people are trying to, you know, say like, oh, the devil
Make me
do it. Like, okay, it's the devil. Because for you to say like, okay, I was hurt by so and so. For them to say that is difficult to accept, no? It's easier to say, even like in marriage, okay, this person left me because he just doesn't like me anymore. Or he just is not compatible with me anymore. It's difficult to accept that compared to saying like, okay, the jinn made our marriage fall apart. You know? So it's difficult to accept, and so you need to be able to accept that in the first place, to be honest about what's going on. And
I mean, it's actually a journey, but not many people want to walk on it.
Yeah. So that is the start for you to be awake. Like something inside you is saying like, okay, wait a minute, maybe there's something else. So for you to get to that state, that is already a very important step for you to take. And then the journey is a difficult one. I mean, you are going to have a lot of emotions, different emotions. And the most important thing is actually to be able to be patient with yourself as well on that journey. Like, this is not a short journey. This is might be a lifetime thing. So you need to be able to accept that.
I think talking about acceptance, right? I'm going to Kismet. You know, acceptance is the most difficult part. Have you ever hate yourself? Like, I mean, your own experience. Have you ever hate yourself to think like, shucks, I went through this, I could have done this, or shucks, why am I going through this? Why do I allow myself to be bullied or to be abused, or whatever experience that you may have? I don't know what you went through lah, but just asking, you know, a normal human being. We are asking everybody randomly, like, do you hate yourself? Right, and this is, I think, the what Ainun trying to say. I mean, Ainun had said, which I'm trying to ask you, because this is a continuation where acceptance and do you hate yourself? And because I think people, when they start to hate themselves, right, they are not going to see things as it is. And that's why the blaming still hold on to the jinn or to the devil. Like, yeah. Your own experience?
Okay, I have a very long answer.
Okay, can. We have time. We have time, right, Mr. Producer?
Okay, so about hating myself. Somehow I don't hate myself because I was in a cocoon, you know.
What is cocoon? Sorry.
Like,
I know
how to
the
say?
movie Cocoon. That one. Is it that one? No.
I mean, we all have how we grew up, right? Like, I had always thought that this is normal. You know, this is my normal.
Okay.
Yeah. So if I have recognized that growing up like this is my normal, I wouldn't have a reason to hate myself. You know, I think the only thing that I resented about myself was not being stronger enough to take on everything that was going on. Which, of course, you know, like only a few years ago, then I realized, oh, okay, I went through all this, and I'm like 41 this year, and obviously society will say this is the age where, you know, you should be settled by now, right? But actually, I am only discovering my whole entire life right now.
And people will say the reason you're not married or the reason you're divorced, the reason you don't have children is because of the jinn.
No, I mean they don't say that, like, but yeah, they could. It's always a mystery, like, why am I not married? You know, but I mean, I know the reasons. And like there's no self-hate, but I do admit that I feel sad that, hey, I'm so old already, and you know, how long more have I got to live on? And I've only known this about my real state, you know, at this age. But then, of course, you know, you pick up yourself and then you just move on, because, you know, with this newfound, you know, experience of your current state, you know, you try, I mean, it becomes like you maneuver, you know, life situations in a different perspective already. And what I wanted to share also just now earlier was that, people did actually ask me to go to berobat and everything before.
That's why I said just now.
I did go, and I think I saw this pakcik lah. It was very fearful. He put a lot of fear on me. You know, I wasn't practicing then.
What did he say, if you don't mind?
He said, you know, when we got into the house, he said, dia kat luar, you know, he's very angry at you for coming here right now, you know, like, and he's very angry that, you know, like, if you try to do anything to rid him off, you know, he's going to be very angry. You just,
Okay.
Yeah, and you then he said, you have to betulkan diri, you know, like, leave your vices and everything, and like, that didn't help at all, because like when I got back, I was just in fear mode all the way, like, oh my god, you know, something's there.
Okay, Kismet, I just sorry to cut you out, but this is an interesting point that I wanted to ask. Between that moment when that pakcik said that, and to the moment now you begin to realize what is the source of the problem, what is the transitional feeling is like? I would like you to share with the people.
Yeah. Now, I mean, okay, so fast forward, right? Like, I was in fear. Even when I wanted to pray, I was also in fear. And like, it really fed worse on my mental health. Yeah. Until, you know, like, my mother didn't know anything about this, that I went to see someone and everything, right? Because that pakcik say it's a sucker in the family. Yeah. So, and he said that, oh, it's your maternal side. And my maternal side, okay, I don't know.
But this is unhealthy. I always had this, people say that, oh, your mother or your father ada saka, and or your mother or your father dah terkena, sebab tu you all kena. Isn't it? And then continue, sorry.
And then so like, I finally spoke to my mom about it.
Then what she said?
And she laughed. She said, you know,
laugh hysterically or
no, she said, you know, Kismet, you know, my family does not believe in all of these things, you know, like, and it's true, because I know them, like, you know, they don't I mean, belief is there, that belief with the unseen is there, but I can't imagine my both paternal and maternal sides, you know, like, you know, keeping a sucker, that kind of thing, you know, like. So the moment she cleared everything, right, I felt so much better. But that's when I started working on myself.
I think she said an important point lah. Like, I mean, the good thing about her is that her family doesn't believe in it. But actually, I felt like a lot of people went through where their family sent them to actually meet this ruqyah, and then they are told all these kind of things, and then as you said, it causes fear. And I think that itself is actually a trauma for a lot of people.
Yes.
Because when their parents send them to actually visit this ruqyah,
the sad part is also the is there a word emphasization? Emphasis,
Emphasizing.
like this is happening.
Yeah.
And you need to take care of yourself.
It creates that fear, and besides that fear, it doesn't help at all, right?
Yeah.
As you said, like that itself is a traumatic experience for a lot of people, and I think that's why you need to be careful of whether you really want to do that. And there are other ways, like as you said, reading the 313 Ayatul Kursi and all that, to actually, help you see whether it's really gangguan lah.
Yeah. But I think on the other aspect also, like what you said, kan, actually it's very interesting also. Because what come to my mind also is like people begin to say like, oh, I experienced something negative in my home. Even zikir also people can say that. Like after zikir also say, oh, the home is something wrong. Oh, I don't feel good. I don't feel this. I don't feel the right vibes.
I think the obsession needs to stop because the jinn are around us, and as I said, I myself have experienced situations where, like the computer play by itself and that kind of thing. But the thing is that you shouldn't be like harping on it. Yeah, it's there, but then you don't need to keep thinking about it and like being suddenly like obsessive and fearing. And I think that is the unhealthy part. You cannot obsess about these kind of things. Oh, this place is haunted. This. I mean, for me, right, when I watch movies, I know it's entertainment. It's not for me to obsess over it. Whereas some people like they are obsessing over it, and
they do nothing about their life.
That is true.
So, Kismet, you ever experience not macam like when you see you met the pakcik, your life change, and I have these people where they say that they see things move around, then they have certain smell, then they have certain meracau. Right. So we don't see it like it's also a mental health thing. Like you develop anxiety, panic attack, or even depression. It can. Right. So how you associate that? Then they will say that, oh, you are trying to remove the jinn from the whole equation. You yourself, what you will say on this matter?
Like what Ainun say, they are around. Like I saw myself experience, stuff happening, but it's just a recognition that these things exist, and not to obsess about it. But what I can say is that, like, when you're in a bad mental state, right, it will get to you. Like your fear of these things, your obsession of these things, like knowing the fact that, you're not seeking treatment because of your mental health, but you're just in that state and thinking that there's a jinn there, that's going to put more fear and that's going to put more trauma on you. It's like you're feeding yourself with trauma, instead of getting worse. And I'm not sure, I like these things. I've heard before people saying that, when you're low, these things are able to get to you. And that's true. Because when I'm at a deep low, things do happen. Yeah. And I just recognize, okay, this is my state right now, and I think, I better do something about it, Yeah. So people want to see it the other way around, like that there is a jinn after me. But then they do not want to do something from within, to help themselves. Now, I still am quite puzzled with that. Like, why isn't there like a push for you to just do something for yourself to, get better? Yeah. Why do you have to put the blame on a jinn? Like, why don't you want to deal with yourself?
I think that, like what we go back just now when Ainun said that, when I was asking Ainun about the difficult part in dealing with ourselves, I think this is where it's very touchy and difficult. Like, oh no, is there something wrong with me? Am I not what I'm supposed to be. That's why I asked you just now whether you hate yourself. Kan?
Yeah.
So this is like the nafs taking over, like, okay, just relax and, you know, enjoy the moment of horror, you know, that kind of thing. I watch horror also lah, like my wife, but I'm the different sort. I'm more like analysing how the culture and the people think of evil and God. But sometimes people don't even see to the point where, like, evil is not equate with God. That means, and it's difficult to even, I mean, if you look into it as a Muslim also, or even in Sufism perspective, right? How does evil exist on its own? It cannot be that evil exists by itself. But this is what I saw whenever I watch Western horror, and it's very different perspective from the Asian horror. If you look at it, although now Asian, we are also trying to take from them, like Insidious lah, Conjuring, and then they will say that this is based on a true story. But then Hollywood say it's all added with sensation, and even I was watching Lord of the Ring, right? Some of the fans were very angry. They say, "Hey, they added this one not in the book. This one not in the book." But then how about horror movie? You know. So what I'm trying to say is like it's very interesting because when you go deep into your soul, when you learn tasawwuf or Sufism, it's like how can evil exist on its own? But the West, what I'm trying to say is also like the West, they are trying to portray that God versus evil, or evil versus God. So who triumph? So it's difficult to defeat the evil. Like you watch all the drama, you see jinn. Right, you saw all the drama, like trying to kill the jinn and all that. Then in the end, it's like, oh, the jinn is very powerful. So I feel that that mindset is also sit in us. Unfortunately, yeah. Right, then we cannot take it lightly. So you engross in it rather than you engross in yourself, sir. And I remember Syekh Ahmad Tijani, he said that the nafs is demonic. So that means that it has the capability to be much more worse than the devil, or he becomes the devil. I mean, even if you look throughout history, right? Hitler, Stalin, or even all those years of colonial, like, these are human beings, you know. But look at how they treated human beings. Look at the World War II Holocaust. Look at all the genocide caused by human beings throughout history and until today. But then we still think that all this is like, I leave it to the jinn, or is the jinn. But in Sufism, we learn that if you don't deal with your nafs, it becomes worse than the jinn. Right? So the biggest jihad is your nafs. But people don't want to see that, right? So coming to, you know, it's an extension of what I'm trying to say about this evil and good things. And we can see that why people lost hope in religion. Because at the end of the day, it's like, evil still triumph. So what's the point, man? Or, you know, the jinn, they have so much power. But when you look back also, you look back, not look back, so main tang. And you look back also, Nabi Sulaiman, the Prophet Sulaiman, he with the jinn. Remember the famous story where he asked who can remove the throne. Then Ifrit said, I can, within a split second. But there's this wali Allah, human being. He said, before you stand, I am able to remove it. To move that throne, right? Because he was a king, he want to move. So that shows about your human capability that you don't understand. Right. So I want to go to Ainun, and you know, Ainun, in to move forward in our life, and we watch the horror, and then we live with the horror. and we don't account it, then we tend to lose our sanity, and our family getting worse, and we don't solve the problems that we are facing, our marriage ke, our children. So how do we unpack this then? You get what I mean?
I think that we really need to find a cause that's either physical or mental first before anything, before we jump to conclusion that it's just jinn. I think I remember there was one time someone asked Shemahi about sleep paralysis.
Yeah.
And surprisingly, Shemahi was saying that it could be psychological.
And he even include saying not everything related to jinn.
Yeah, that's what he said. So I felt that we need to find the mental and physical cause first before we jump to the conclusion. And this is to avoid a situation where we don't deal with the actual problem. And when we don't deal with the actual problem, we don't grow, and we are still stuck in that situation. And I think that even this obsession with horror and all that, I think we need to understand that even for example, if you watch horror, right, the last thing before you sleep, you were watching horror, and then you sleep and then you dream of jinn chasing you. Then that's like obvious, right? The obvious connection is there. You did this to yourself. So you need to take responsibility for it because that was the last thing you watched. So it affects us no matter what. Like, okay, you watch horror, maybe you'll be afraid, whatever happens, you think like, okay, there is a jinn, even, or you were walking home at night and then you feel like something is watching you, things like that. So what we do actually affects our
our mental
and emotion. So we need to be aware of that. And that is why it's important, even as you said, like even in horror movies, when we watch, we need to understand that actually God is all powerful. It's not like God versus evil, no? There's no comparison. And that is why you need to understand, even as you watch movies, you cannot take that as how the reality is about the ghaib. It might be like very different. You in fact, like, you don't become ghost when you die, but in horror movies you become a ghost. How does that even work? And then the ghost can even kill you. And then how can the soul kill? In what way? So there needs to be understanding as well when you watch movies, for you to understand, and then don't get obsessed with it. And know that it has an impact on you. It can cause, I wouldn't be surprised if you watch horror movies then it causes sleep paralysis and all that. It can happen because watching horror is actually can be triggering your trauma as well.
Yeah, just like someone that we know, after watching horror movie, that something fall in the kitchen, and then he said, I'm not going to the kitchen because the kitchen dark and it's already 1 a.m. And he said, I'm not going to go into the kitchen.
Yeah, so scaring yourself and all that. So you need to be careful lah. It's okay for you to watch, but then you also need to know it can affect you in real life. And then to be honest with, a lot of the thing, as I said, the Professor Mustafa Badawi said, a lot of it is just psychological, mental. So that says a lot, because although we know that it does happen, we shouldn't use that as the first explanation is that,
Getting to Kismet on this also, right? People always tend to don't really understand how people can be abusive, narcissistic behavior in a family itself, between parents and children, or children with parents, or even some abuse happen in the family and then it becomes their life later on. Like they don't understand why we are broken, why we are dysfunctional. It can be anyone, right? You can be someone living in a landed property or condo, or drive a sports car, but you have a weird family in a sense of like what I know was saying, the odd behavior. So it's true, right? I'm asking you that people can be abusive even though they look normal outside. And they say people also always relate to, oh, this jinn, they be possessed, you know, that kind of thing. Yeah, your take on it.
I think just now you mentioned Jekyll and Hyde, right?
Yeah.
I think there's a Jekyll and Hyde in all of us.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so like, you know, even if you are the victim and, you know, the perpetrator is a perpetrator, you can end up being the perpetrator if you don't do anything to yourself eventually. And it's a very, how to say, and this mindset will be like,
It's a complex.
it's a complex because like you grow up thinking that, hey, this has been done to me. Like, you know, upon discovery that this is not normal, then, hey, this has been done to me, and then you're dealing with it now, and then the resentment or whatever, you know, you might inflict it back to the world.
And this is where you become the devil itself.
Exactly. So I think, you know, that involves a lot of, you know, like acknowledging first, you know, the problem and that the problem exists. And then after that, you know, having the strength to go and seek help, you know, do something, you know, you have to recalibrate everything that you have, that has happened to yourself before, reprogram yourself to respond to your situations appropriately, you know. And like what you say, it can happen to everyone, you know, the poor, even the affluent, or, you know, the well-to-do, you know. And I mean, the situations, you know, like for someone who has been through trauma, right, they always tend to feel like, why is this always happening to me everywhere in my life? Like, you know, here in my friends, my social circles, you know.
And I don't understand how I make decision.
Yeah, even at the workplace. But the thing is that we are responding to the situation the same everywhere. And the world is not, how to say, everyone around us have their own ways of recognizing how you can benefit, right? And of course, we are going to meet perpetrators out there, outside of the home or outside of the space that you got traumatized with. And they are going to recognize that, hey, I can make use of this one, you know? So people who have always been in trauma or being like controlled, they will always have themselves in a situation where they're always being controlled without knowing. So I think that's why, you know, it's to break all these patterns, you know, it's just acknowledge that you're going through this. Do something about it so that, you know, you can get out of these patterns.
Yeah, what I'm trying to ask you is also like people cannot imagine how evil people can be.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously, if you don't do anything about yourself, your resentment grows, the nafs grows, and you just end up doing things. And doesn't mean that even if you're healed, doesn't mean that you won't be able to, you won't do stuff that, you know, is evil to others as well. I mean, you have to always put yourself in check. Yeah. And I think the crux is just doing something. Stop. I mean, like this evil thing will grow if you don't do anything about it. It's just how the nafs thicken when you don't do anything about your nafs. Yeah.
Interesting. Coming back to the movies and all that, right? I think our society as a whole also, they love to hear horror story. Like now you see in TikTok, people go paranormal hunting, paranormal adventure. Sometimes I don't really understand, like, why would you like to go to a empty home or deserted home, or you go to the grave and you go around trying to prove they exist. So they exist, so what?
I think I can only say one thing. What you seek is seeking you.
That's me. Yeah, it's true. But
so they will seek you instead.
Yeah, but what I'm trying to say that the fascination is also the cause of why people use it for their own comfort, trying to ignore their trauma. Remember, they're like, everybody like to hear that, and it's a high rating. Viral, like, oh, you know not, when we walk over here And then like, obviously it will happen. You go home at late at night and all that. So what's the moral of the story? You don't want to deal with your own demon, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then you said, oh, but it's sensation. That doesn't give you any real enlightenment. But I think what I'm trying to say is also is that this is where it makes our society focus on it. Macam, wah, this happen, wah, ada Pontianak, wah, ada apa, jembalang lah, apa kan. Wah, like the mother don't like the children because the mother dulu sihir dia, the mother ada saka. Like, for those who want to ask me what is saka, is like they say that is something that your ancestor have, and then it goes down to you or to your parents. S-A-K-A, right? Not S-U-C-K-E-R. That is saka. So it's saka, right? Yeah. So I think we can talk this the whole day. It's never end. So I'm gonna have to end this podcast. Kalau tak, our Mr. Hanis wait until Maghrib. So and then there will be a jinn thing, another jinn thing, right? What would your advice be? I think I will Kismet first for all those people out there who harp on this matter, like my marriage failed because of jinn, my wife or my husband changed after the marriage, 5 years, after 7 years, or whatever lah situation, your family and so on, or you cannot find a job, or you're sick. I remember some people even say that cancer got jinn. Really? Yeah, some people even ask me to go ruqyah because I had cancer before, and they say like, hey, go and meet an ustad, he ruqyah for you. So what's your advice be, Kismet?
There's going to be so many jinns for you to blame lah. That's the thing lah. If you keep blaming jinns, there can be one jinn that come and another jinn that come, and then the problem never ends. But like what Ainun say lah, like first start to see if it's a physical issue, like or mental issue, like, I mean, look within ourselves lah. I mean, that's where we should start from lah. Just look within ourselves, be honest. Don't try and hide everything, because the more you hide, I think there'll be more jinns in the closet lah. Yeah.
Remind me of the Wings rock band. He got a song called Jerangkung Dalam Almari. Yeah. How about you, Ainun, before we end?
I think generally lah, we need to be less obsessed with the unseen, because not just when you were talking about jinn, right? Like unseen can also be like good things, like I have a certain good dream, and then you obsess with it, like, oh, maybe this person has a good aura about him.
Yeah, like Tarika people also lah.
Yeah. So on one end you think some people like obsessed about the jinn, then on the other end some people obsessed about like aura and
I mean, since you brought it up, do you think that people into spiritual, like all those in the Sufi path and all that spiritual path, right? They are spiritual bypassing in this situation whereby they say that, oh, it's not my problem because I do zikir, I do.
Yeah, I think it does happen. Like you just want to think like, okay, now that I'm spiritual, everything else is settled, that kind of thing. So that's why basically it's just not healthy to obsess about the unseen. We should be focusing on God and not like, okay, I have a sign from God. Okay, maybe I have a good dream. That means I'm a special person. On one end you have that, and then on the other end you have people who obsess about jinn, and then they're thinking like, okay, there's some bad feeling here, like very heaty. So all this kind of talk, actually I felt like it's unhealthy and we should avoid. Even if it's true that a place has a jinn or whatever, I don't think it's healthy to talk about it and to obsess over it.
Yeah.
There are ways, to protect yourself. The awliya have given us a lot of zikr that can protect yourself. And as I said, and as you said you mentioned, it's not about God versus evil, because there's no comparison, right?
Yeah.
So we shouldn't be thinking like, okay, there's something higher than God. and that is an important part of it.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, before I end this podcast, I would just like to thank both of my guests, my wife Ainun and Kismet, and also a very deep reflection. If we want to run away or escape from the truth in our life, the truth will eventually come to confront us time and time again. And I felt that this is what happened to many people. And even in the Quran, Allah mentioned about those who denial about themselves, that they will be confronted with the ugly truth. So here we are not saying whether sihir don't happen or don't exist, but here we are saying that we have to go deep into ourselves, to introspect ourselves, to understand ourselves as a human being, which Allah created us, in which that we need to differentiate the reality of our inner being, like Imam Ghazali or Syekh Ahmad Tijani had said, whereby you have your own evil too, where you don't realize how it exists within yourselves. And I remember Syekh Hassan Sisi, he said, the closest enemy is to you, is within you, it's your nafs. Kill it before it kills you. So I hope those who watching and listening to this podcast, you have an open mind to introspect yourself, so that you will find this life interesting through Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's always amazing to understand how we function, what have we become, and the journey is to Allah. And with this, I end this podcast, and I hope you benefit from it. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Look out for my next podcast series, Real Talk with Khalid Ajmain.
Welcome to Real Talk with Khalid Ajmain.